Welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. This week we'll be looking at television, movies, and what the Beach Boys were up to in the first 3 months of 1975, January, February, and March. Let's get started with a look at some notable news. On Sunday, January 12th, in a commercial run during Super Bowl IX between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings, Chrysler pitchman Joe Garagiola announces that for a limited time, anyone buying a new Plymouth Duster or Dodge Dart would get a $200 check directly from Chrysler. Rampant inflation, high interest rates, and an overestimation of consumer demand for higher mileage vehicles in the face of recent gas shortages had left the big three U.S. automakers with a huge inventory of unsold cars. The buy a car, get a check strategy of auto rebates is an immediate hit. Within weeks, other car manufacturers have followed suit, and new cars are practically flying out of showrooms. I never understood the big attraction of buying something and then getting part of your money mailed back to you. Apparently, it gave consumers the feeling that they were getting a deal in a way that simply lowering the price of the car didn't. In any case, rebates become a hugely successful strategy for selling automobiles. Also in January, the television networks begin rolling out new series as mid-season replacements for some of the failures of the fall of 1974. On Friday, January 17th, ABC begins rebuilding their failed new Friday night lineup with a new crime drama, Beretta. Tony Musante had declined to return for a second season of the police drama Toma. Originally, ABC decided to recast the series for the fall of 1974 with actor Robert Blake as Toma. Eventually, it was decided to create a new series that better suited Blake's personality. By mid-season, they have Beretta. Beretta's memorable theme song, Keep Your Eye on the Sparrow, is sung by Sammy Davis Jr. and reminds us, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. With his tough guy image, his pet cockatoo Fred, and catchphrases like, that's the name of that tune, and you can take that to the bank. Beretta will be a hit and run until 1978. One night later, on Saturday, January 18th, The Jeffersons premieres on CBS. It's a mid-season replacement for the failed Paul Sand in Friends and Lovers, which gives it the plum spot on Saturday nights between All in the Family and The Mary Tyler Moore Show. It's another spin-off from All in the Family by Norman Lear and stars Isabel Sanford, Sherman Hemsley, and Mike Evans as the Bunkers' former neighbors who have found success in the dry cleaning business and moved on up to a deluxe apartment in the sky. It'll be an immediate hit, ending its first season as the fourth highest rated show on television. On Thursday, January 23rd, Barney Miller replaces Paper Moon on ABC. With all the gritty police dramas on ABC, we now get a sitcom set in a New York City police department with an ensemble cast headed by Hal Linden as Barney Miller. It'll be a solid hit for ABC and run until 1982. One night later, on Friday, January 24th, ABC continues trying to rebuild its Friday night schedule with the highly touted Hot L Baltimore. Based on a 1973 off-Broadway play, it's Norman Lear's first series for ABC. It's about the residents of a seedy New York hotel, which has the letter E burned out on its neon sign and gives the show its name. It features some controversial material and airs with the warning about mature subject matter at the beginning of the program. The series will become notable as Norman Lear's first flop. It'll only run until April 25th for a total of 13 episodes. Following their separation and the demise of the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour, Sonny Bono had tried a variety series of his own on ABC in the fall of 1974. The show had only lasted 13 weeks. A month and a half later, Cher launches her own variety series with a special preview on Wednesday, February 12th, featuring guests Flip Wilson, Bette Midler, and probably the biggest guest star anyone could possibly have had at the time, Elton John, who performs his recent #1 hit single, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. It's not actually a live performance. He does a live vocal to the pre-recorded backing track, but it is an exciting and rare opportunity to see Elton John on television. He also appears in comedy sketches and duets with Cher on Benny and the Jets. Cher will become part of CBS's Sunday night lineup 4 days later on February 16th in the same time slot formerly held by Sonny's show on ABC. On Monday, February 24th, comes the premiere of S.W.A.T. on ABC. S.W.A.T. stands for Special Weapons and Tactics, a heavily armed police unit that employs military strategies. The first S.W.A.T. team was established by the Los Angeles Police Department in 1967. The series is almost ridiculously action-packed. The opening credit sequence shows an alarm going off, everybody grabbing weapons, jumping into a van, and then running around, bounding over fences, rappelling down buildings, jumping off of roofs, and diving headfirst through windows. You can only imagine what an actual armed desperado would have thought of this clown show. It'll be rated as one of the most violent TV shows of the 70s. Now it just seems hilariously over the top and about as realistic a look at law enforcement as the 1966 Batman series. It'll end the season as ABC's highest rated show at a very respectable number 16. The average cost of a movie ticket in 1975 is $2.05. As with everything else, prices are on the rise. In 1974, the average had been $1.87. That's a nearly 10% increase in 1 year. Of course, many 1974 films are still doing great at the box office as 1975 begins. The Godfather Part 2 ended 1974 at number 1 at the box office and will be there for the first 2 weeks of 1975. It'll return to number 1 for an additional 5 weeks beginning March 26th, just ahead of the Academy Awards presentation on April 8th, when it'll win Best Director for Francis Ford Coppola, Best Supporting Actor for Robert De Niro, and Best Picture of 1974. The Towering Inferno will be number 1 the week of January 15th and for an additional 5 weeks beginning February 12th. Murder on the Orient Express will be number 1 at the box office for 2 weeks beginning January 22nd. And Young Frankenstein will top the box office on February 5th. Notable in new movies in the first quarter, on January 29th, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore opens in wide release. It had been previewed in late 1974 for Oscar consideration. We talked about it in episode 250, U.S. Pop Culture 1974, Part 7. On February 6th comes Disney's live-action family comedy, The Strongest Man in the World, starring Kurt Russell. As Robert Zastro pointed out in episode 277, The Monkey's Uncle, Russell's Dexter Riley character had kind of picked up where Tommy Kirk's Merlin Jones left off as Disney's brilliant but kooky college student inventor. It's the third, and as it will turn out last, of Disney's Dexter Riley series. Opening on February 12th is The Stepford Wives, a dystopian sci-fi thriller starring Catherine Ross. On February 14th comes Shampoo, a comedy featuring the exploits of a womanizing Beverly Hills hairdresser in the late 60s, played by Warren Beatty. It co-stars Julie Christie and Goldie Hawn. It features a lot of popular music from the mid and late 60s, including the Beach Boys' Wouldn't It Be Nice, which plays over the opening and closing credits. It'll be number 1 at the box office the week of June 11th. On March 7th comes Funny Lady, a musical comedy drama sequel to 1968's hit Funny Girl. Barbra Streisand returns as Fanny Bryce, this time playing opposite James Caan. It'll be a major hit and number 1 at the box office the week of March 19th. Opening on March 13th is The Great Waldo Pepper, George Roy Hill's World War I adventure drama starring Robert Redford. On March 14th comes the film version of Neil Simon's 1971 darkly comic play, The Prisoner of Second Avenue, starring Jack Lemmon and Anne Bancroft. Also premiering on March 14th is Ken Russell's over-the-top film adaptation of The Who's rock opera, Tommy. It was produced with the full cooperation of The Who, including new material by Pete Townsend, and stars Roger Daltrey as Tommy and features Keith Moon as Uncle Ernie. It also stars Anne Margaret, Oliver Reed, Jack Nicholson, Eric Clapton as the Preacher, Tina Turner as the Acid Queen, and Elton John as the Pinball Wizard. The advertising promised us our senses would never be the same. In 1975, a movie appearance by Elton John is an especially huge draw, and though his recording of Pinball Wizard isn't released as a single in the US, the song receives massive airplay. The recording will help push the soundtrack album all the way to number 2 on the chart on May 31st. ABC's Late Night Wide World Special presents the Tommy premiere party 3 nights after the premiere on Friday, March 17th. Hosted by David Frost, it features a star-studded crowd, music and clips from the movie, and interviews, including one with Elton John, during which he tells us that the title of his next album will be Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. In addition to the premiere special, Tommy is hyped with commercials on radio and television, fan magazines like this official Tommy film book, which features photos from the movie. There's a small color supplement there. You can see Elton John in the famous giant shoes. And then on the back, you get a full color photo of Tommy and of the Pinball Wizard. There was also a promotional album sent to radio stations with a 1-hour documentary on the making of the film, featuring dialogue and conversation with Roger Daltrey, Elton John, Anne Margaret, Pete Townsend, and director Ken Russell, along with excerpts from the soundtrack album. Tommy will be a hit, ending up as the 10th highest grossing movie of 1975. Winding up first quarter film releases, Disney's family mystery adventure Escape to Witch Mountain is released on March 21st. And on March 26th, John Wayne is Brannigan, a Chicago detective on assignment in London. The Beach Boys start the year with surprising momentum after some high-profile appearances in 1974, and of course the stunning success of Capitol's Endless Summer collection, which went to number 1 on October 5th. On March 10th, a little over 2 years since it was first released as a single, Reprise re-releases Sail on Sailor. After Endless Summer, the Beach Boys are hot enough that it actually charts higher than it did in 1973, going to number 49 on May 31st. On its original 1973 release, it had peaked at 79. This makes the 2-year-old re-release track the most successful Beach Boys single on Reprise to date. On March 22nd, Billboard reports that Capitol is preparing a second Best of 2 record set to follow up on the success of Endless Summer. The new set will be called Spirit of America, and just like with Endless Summer, Capitol is preparing massive national promotion. Unfortunately, there's still no sign of a new Beach Boys record. Apart from a January 4th show in Hawaii, the group take a break from the road for most of the first quarter. On March 19th, they meet at Caribou Ranch for 2 days of rehearsals ahead of a hectic 1975 touring schedule to come. They kick off their first tour of the year in Tucson, Arizona on March 21st. And that'll do it for the first quarter. I hope you'll join me next time when we look at music in the second quarter of 1975. Till then, as always, I look forward to your comments and feedback. Please hit like if you don't mind, subscribe if you haven't. Have a great week. Thanks for watching. Bye.